In the perpetually shrouded town of Nevoeiro Eterno, a young doctor unearths a chilling truth. The very mist that isolates them isn't a prison, but a desperate, centuries-old shield against an unimaginable horror lurking beyond their sight. The eternal veil of Nevoeiro, the old boss groaned and rattled. Cutting through the dense gray curtain, Dr. Elias Costa, a man in his early 30s with a stubborn jaw and idealism intact, watched the landscape swallowed by the mist. It was a mist unlike anything he had ever seen, so thick that the sun was a mere memory, the stars a myth. With every meter, the feeling of isolation became more oppressive. Nevoeiro Eterno. The name, an omen, hung heavy in the thin air. He had come to the small town in the interior of Santa Catarina to take up a post at the only local clinic, a place no one else wanted. The reports were vague, an old, isolated town with residents of fragile health and strange habits. Elias, fresh out of residency and eager for a challenge, saw an opportunity. Little did he know that the real challenge wouldn't be medicine, but reality itself. The bus screeched to a halt, and Elias stepped out onto a damp cobblestone street lined with dark, weathered wooden houses. The windows were small, the doors heavy, as if wanting to seal off the outside world. The mist swirled around flickering lampposts, blurring the little visibility there was into a smudged watercolor painting. The silence was profound, broken only by the occasional whisper of the wind between the houses and the muffled sound of his own footsteps. He found the clinic, a modest building that smelled of mold and disinfectant. The faces that greeted him were pale, marked by lines of fatigue. Their eyes, in particular, caught his attention. They were deep-set, carrying an ancient sadness. The town staff was small and reclusive, the reception cold but polite. Elias soon realized that there was something fundamentally wrong with the health of the inhabitants of Nevoeiro Eterno. It wasn't a specific disease, but a chronic deficiency of vitality, as if the very light was being drained from them. Children seemed more apathetic than restless, and the elderly even weaker than normal. In the following days, Elias tried to adapt to the routine. Consultations were dominated by complaints of fatigue, vague pains, and an inexplicable sensitivity to light, even though there was never sun. He attempted examinations, but the results were always inconclusive, the anomalies too subtle to categorize. One night, while logging patient records, a young woman burst into the clinic. It was Julia, a teenager with large, restless eyes that seemed to hold a spark of rebellion. "Dr. Elias, you have to help me. My sister, she's disappearing." Julia led him to a house on the outskirts of town, where her younger sister lay in bed, her skin translucent, her body trembling, but without a fever. Elias couldn't find a physical cause. As he examined the girl, Julia whispered, "It was the mist. It always takes those who try to leave. My parents, they tried to leave years ago." The story of Julia's parents' disappearance in the mist was an open secret in the town. Everyone spoke of it in hushed tones with tangible fear. It was the local legend. Anyone who tried to escape Nevoeiro Eterno was claimed by the mist. Elias, a man of science, dismissed the idea as superstition. But Julia's sister's symptoms didn't fit anything he knew. Desperate, Elias sought the help of Donna Aurora, the old healer who lived in an isolated cabin on the outskirts, almost swallowed by the mist. The cabin was dark and smelled of herbs and damp earth. Donna Aurora was a slender figure with piercing eyes that seemed to see right through him. She didn't smile, and her words were few, but heavily weighted. "The girl is connecting too much to the outside," Donna Aurora said, her voice hoarse like dry leaves. "The mist doesn't take, doctor, it protects." Elias frowned. "Protects? From what?" Donna Aurora pointed to the mist hovering outside the window, denser than ever, from the great shadow, the one that longs for light. She told an ancient story, passed down through generations, Centuries ago, Nevoeiro Eterno was a sunlit valley, prosperous and vibrant. But an ancient cosmic entity, a being that fed on light and vitality, began to approach. It was a creature of pure void and anti-sun that threatened to consume all life on the planet. The town's ancestors, aware of the imminent danger, made a pact. They summoned a mist, not as a physical barrier, but as a veil of concentrated darkness, an energetic anomaly that, due to its density, prevented the great shadow from perceiving and reaching the light of life within Nevoeiro Eterno. The mist, Donna Aurora explained, was not natural. It was a psychic force field maintained by the collective consciousness of the residents, a generational sacrifice. That was why the mist seemed to react to emotions, and why it was so difficult to leave. Anyone who tried to break the veil weakened the shield, alerting the great shadow to the presence of life inside. The residents' illness was the price, the constant effort to maintain the mist, the subtle draining of their own vitality to feed the protective veil. Those who tried to flee lost the veil's protection, and the great shadow began to claim them, sucking their life force until extinction. Julia's parents, in their desperate attempt to escape, had triggered this process. Julia's sister was in an early stage of the same deterioration. Elias's skepticism crumbled. The pieces fit, the fatigue, the sensitivity to light, the despair in the residents' eyes, the myth of the disappearances. The mist was not a prison, but a protective shell. And the terrible secret the town harbored was not something they did, but something they prevented. So, we're trapped here? Elias asked, his voice almost a whisper. Donna Aurora sighed. For the greater good, Doctor? The light of the world out there depends on our darkness in here. Elias returned to the clinic, the weight of the truth crushing. He had to tell Julia. She deserved to know her parents' sacrifice. He found her sitting by her sister's bed, her eyes fixed on the mist outside. Julia, he began, his voice soft, your parents, they weren't taken by the mist. They were consumed because they tried to save you. They tried to leave to seek help, but in doing so, they exposed the town. He explained about the great shadow, about the mist as a shield, about the price the town paid. Julia listened in silence, tears streaming down her face. Anger and grief gave way to a painful understanding. Her parents hadn't abandoned her. They had sacrificed themselves. And her sister was dying because the barrier was weakening. What can we do? Julia asked, her voice choked, but with a new resolve. Elias felt a glimmer of hope. If the mist was maintained by the collective consciousness, perhaps there was a way to strengthen that bond, to reverse the draining process. He remembered ancient texts on the human psyche, on the power of faith and unity. With Donna Aurora's help, Elias and Julia began to work. They needed more than acceptance. They needed a collective purpose. Elias, the doctor, put aside his scientific tools and embraced the role of a soul healer. He began holding meetings in the main square, initially with low attendance. He couldn't reveal the full truth about the Great Shadow. The terror would be too much, but he could talk about Nevoeiro Eterno's great purpose, the need for unity for everyone's survival. He spoke about the history of their ancestors, the bravery of their forebears, and the daily sacrifice they all made to protect their home. He emphasized that everyone, by living their lives in harmony, by maintaining faith in the mist, was contributing to the shield. Julia, with her passion, became a powerful spokeswoman for the younger generation, transforming sadness into determination. Slowly, the town began to change. The tired eyes of the residents gained a new sparkle, not of happiness, but of resilience. Apathy gave way to a sense of community. Small acts of kindness, of mutual support, blossomed. The mist, once a symbol of entrapment, became a symbol of protection and unity. Julia's sister's health began to improve slowly. She was still fragile, but the darkness in her skin receded. It was proof that the effort was working. The great shadow was still there, on the other side of the veil, a constant threat. But now, the residents of Nevoeiro Eterno faced it together, a silent and determined collective. Elias, the skeptical doctor, had found his true purpose. He was not just a healer of bodies, but a guardian of a secret, a protector of a darkness that saved the world. He understood that sometimes the greatest light comes from the deepest shadows, and that the real suspense was not in the fear of the unknown, but in the terrible and beautiful truth he had discovered in Nevoeiro Eterno. The town, enveloped in its perpetual veil, would continue its silent sacrifice, a bastion of darkness ensuring the light of the rest of the world. And Elias, the outsider, was now an intrinsic part of that secret, a crucial link in the chain that maintained the eternal veil.